Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming in to join in for the talk on the pre-exam prep and the post-exam analysis. The first part is that before we commence with the talk, we want to say that we actually spend a lot of time preparing for exam. However, we often neglect to actually analyze what went wrong during an assessment and how we can improve it, which is the reason why we want to have this session to show you some of the techniques that we have used, and numerous of the students have found it extremely useful. It's also important for me to emphasize that you need to understand all these various strategies for conducting these reviews, because it will help you to actually target your effort on working on where you're weak at. So the whole entire talk, to sum it up in a couple of words, is that after an exam, you need to find out where you're weak at. And then we need to find ways to actually gear yourself for it, so that when the next exam comes or the next assessment comes, you're better able to deal with it and not let all those identified weaknesses pull you back or hold you back. Okay, so let me share the first technique. The first technique when we actually analyze student exam scripts is that we identify poorly scored questions. And then we conclude to say that, okay, based on those questions you got it wrong, you are weak in this topic or this subtopic. It is actually an expedient approach, a quick one, and it really helps. However, it is not uncommon that your poor performance for those questions could be due to other factors. Maybe perhaps carelessness, exam stress, time limitations, or maybe you misread or misunderstood what the question is really asking. So as a result, this method does not give us the full picture of what you're weak at. Still useful as a first step, linking poorly scored questions to weakness for that topic or that subtopic. So that is a good technique. But we now need to take a look at the next step. So in this next step, we want you to circle and categorize your exam script into 3 groups that you have already done. That means if you get your exam script today, you circle them. Questions that you are very confident of getting them correct, you circle it red, perhaps. Those that you know that you do not know how to do it, maybe you circle it black. And of course, there will be one group that sit in between. It's really useful for us to do that. And then basically we can then match it to whether you get them correct or wrong. So let me explain in detail using perhaps a table. After you get the exam script and you circle them, like we said, you will then be able to very quickly see where you're weak at. So you see, questions that you say that you're very, very confident on getting them right, and you indeed answer them correctly. So this is obviously an area that you're good at. Of course, we'll be very interested to know which are the questions that you say that you basically have no clue how to do it. And certainly the results confirm that, because you get them wrong as well. So basically any questions that fall into this category, we can say that this is an identified area of weakness, and we need to work hard on them, and we need to find ways to actually reinforce those weaknesses. So let us now take a look at the other 2 boxes, all right, which are actually specifically your black and then your red. Okay, let me unpack the red one first, all right. This is a category of questions where you say that you are very confident of getting them right, but in fact, you end up scoring very poorly for them. Okay. This is actually obviously of concern, because you got them wrong and you thought that you're pretty good at it. So what are the other causes that could lead to that? One of the common cause is that the students actually do not practice enough. And you perhaps have used the correct method, the correct concept, but in the process of working through, you got them wrong. This seems to be attributed most of the time when I speak to students to the fact that they spend a lot of time reading solutions instead of doing the questions and then honestly then checking with the answers. So basically, when you read solutions extensively in your exam preparation, you will be able to recognize questions that are always asked, and in the exam hall, you will see the question and you know that, yeah, that questions I've seen it before, I should know how to do it. But because you did not practice it, you're not able to get it correct. So this is actually an area that's really important for you to look at. Of course, another reason for that could be that you perhaps have misunderstand what the question is really asking. You may have made the wrong assumption, or you may have mixed up concepts. Okay. It also could be due to the fact that you're careless. That could be attributed that you copy the number incorrectly from transiting from one step to the next, or you perhaps press the calculator incorrectly. And obviously, nervousness will play a part as well in basically making sure that you underperform. It could also be because due to lack of time. All right. Hence, in short, questions you poorly score does not mean you do not understand the topic or subtopic. You need to now look at the underlying reasons for it. Okay. So if you were to get a question wrong, whereby you thought that you're pretty good at it, and in fact, if you validate it and go through it, and you find that indeed you're pretty good at it, you should, going back to do more questions on the topic or subtopic will not make you better. It could be because of time management. It could be because you cannot manage your emotion, which I'll later talk about it later in the third step. All right. Let me move on to the black box. Okay. For the black box, it means that you expected to get this question wrong, but you did not. You end up scoring pretty decently for it. Okay. Do not celebrate. You still need to put in work to ensure that you truly understand the topic or subtopic. If I can put it this way, it's very applicable for MCQ. Because in MCQ questions, sometimes you're just lucky you got it correct. But you may not have any idea of what the question is asking. Certainly, that is a category of questions that you should be telling the tutor that actually I got lucky. I didn't know how to do it. I take a risk on it and I got the answers. Okay. So you still need to go back and work in the topic and subtopic. So in short, in this second step, what we have actually run through is that it is imperative that you need to know your own strength and weakness in terms of topics and subtopics. During the exam, you should be focusing on the questions that you can do well, skip those that you don't know how to do. It's better to carefully complete 75% of the exam, get all the answers correct, than hastily complete the entire paper and get only half of them correct. So to perform the best in exam, student really should showcase their strength by dedicating their energy, their effort, their time on those questions that you know you're going to do really well, and save the most difficult question or the questions that you have least confidence in last. So I'm going to talk about the final two. The final two basically now go beyond about looking at just the mark. It is about how do you now gauge your own performance by how you actually respond and how you manage your emotions and time in the exam hall. This basically doesn't look at numbers. This basically need us to talk to you, need you to have an honest review of yourself. So let me paint some situations or some scenarios and what students should or should not do. All right. These are the 5 common scenarios that you may actually encounter in an exam hall. Okay, in the first case, you find that you're faced with a really difficult paper. Many questions you're not sure actually, so you're getting a bit nervous. All right. The way to go about doing it is to focus on questions you can answer and basically achieve 100% for all those that you know. There are not going to be many of them. Whatever you answer, you have to get them absolutely right. Then you have to rely back on understanding on commonly asked exam questions and marking scheme to try your best to unravel what are the topic or subtopic yet to be asked and try and see whether you can, stick it to it. The things you shouldn't really do is to panic, spend a lot of time on questions that you really have no clue at, and then that will actually basically drag you down, all right, for that paper itself. Okay, and it is also quite common for such paper where they put the most difficult question, okay, as the first question, because they really want to throw you off balance. So you have to be very careful about it. So I typically actually say that when you actually select your first question to do in the exam, make sure you pick one that you're really good at and most confident in, because that step that you take actually could decide really your how you perform for the entire exam. In the second scenario, it's just the opposite. Really easy paper. Only a couple of questions you really do not know. You feel really good about doing the paper. I want to actually, unfortunately, tell you that this you have an easy paper, but if the marking scheme is really very tight and they're very demanding, you still may not do as well. So you've got to be really careful how you present your answer. Make sure all keywords are written. Make sure all steps are shown. Be meticulous in your calculations, because getting an easy question wrong could really be punitive, all right, for an easy paper. Do not be overconfident. Don't rush through the questions. And of course, one thing I don't advocate is that leave the exam hall early, all right? Make sure you check your answers, okay? The third case is probably a subset of any of the scenario you may come across. It largely applies to data analysis type of question, where they give you a lot of data, a real life problem, and then you find it a bit difficult to try and identify whether which topic or subtopic. In those circumstances, make sure you really try and link the questions to relevant topic, subtopic that you know, that yet to be asked in the exam, in the paper that you've done, all right? Obviously, for such question, you ought to leave it last to do, all right? And consider any possible marking scheme that commonly in the paper they will ask, but is yet to be asked, all right? And read the questions again to make sure you truly understand what they are asking. The last thing you really want to do is to write something irrelevant or to fit your answer to the question, which is most often what we will do. I mean, people ask you a question, you're not very sure, so you just say something, yeah? Actually, that is obviously your last resort. Don't do that as a first resort, because you're unlikely to get anything correct for answering a question that you're not even sure what they're asking. The fourth cases that we always typically see is fear creeps in, all right? So basically, you look at the questions, you look at the first question, you're not feeling too good about it, scramble through that. You hit the second question, you again are not sure. This is when your whole entire exam could actually be marred by the fact that you are emotionally charged now. You're basically now, your fears start to kick in. You're really not sure, you're getting nervous, all right? I really advocate that what you really need to do is to take a moment, just chill. You have to. If you have any religion, make a prayer. If you don't have, take a deep breath, drink some water if you're permitted to. Don't let nervousness and fear creep in. Later, I'll talk more about it. And you ought to avoid any of such questions that triggers it. Don't think about it. So you need to build yourself. You need to be, in a nutshell, to have courage and say that, I'm just going to forget about it. Let me start afresh. You need to have that. And you must do that. Okay? The final scenario I talk about is actually what I call a black hole question. It is a question that you feel that, yeah, I think I know how to do it. And then you get yourself stuck in. As you get on doing it, you find that it's getting more and more difficult. This is the question that is what I deem a black hole. Something that you feel that you could do, you get sucked inside there, takes up all your energy, all your resources, and the best part, you get it wrong. Later in the analysis, when we actually check with you, I'll always ask any black hole questions, and you tell me, yeah, I have. I put a lot of effort in this, I got a 0 for it. This is what you ought not do. This is when you need to start to recognize at some point in time when you're doing the questions, remember the conversation we have, remember the chat we have now, or the talk we have now, is that if it is a black hole questions, get out from it, do it last. Don't do it first. Basically, such question itself is common for exam script to have such questions like that. It is something that you know you can do, especially for MCQ actually. The questions, you can do it, but it takes tremendous amount of effort unless you know the shortcut to it, which means instead of using 90 seconds for every MCQ question that you are located to, you use actually perhaps 2 minutes or 3 minutes, which means although you spend 3 minutes in getting this question correct, you have actually ditched the time that you ought to spend on another question. Basically, this is what I deem a black hole questions. Black hole questions, you typically do it last. And you need to be able to see through it, whether there's any shortcut. Okay? So these are some of the common scenarios you need to take a look at it. So to recap, if I may, to get back to the last steps, is basically the last step, what we are looking at is we are concerned about how your emotion affect your exam performance. Emotion has a substantial influence on the cognitive processes in humans, including perception, attention, memory, reasoning, and problem solving. So an emotional charged, intelligent, and hardworking student is unlikely to be able to do well in exam. The solution to that is basically to take every opportunity you have when doing revision to solve questions with time limit without the notes. Idea is basically to build up reflexes in your brain muscles to get used to performing under exam environment. Basically to draw the paraphrase of basically a NBA basketball player. They train themselves so much under intense competition, knowing that this ball, when they score it, it means the team win, right? They are still able to do it because their muscle reflexes have built them up for it. They don't think about the game anymore. They don't think about it in a competition. They just shoot it as if like in the practice. You have to do that. And it has to take a lot of rehearsal, a lot of conditioning to do that. So basically, I'm coming down to my last slide soon, all right? Before that, in summary, exam revision seems like just doing and solving questions. Doing the question is actually the activity. The intention of the activity for each of you should vary widely. It shouldn't be the same because all of us have different strengths and weaknesses. I have students who are actually very lazy, but very good at taking exam. And so I'm not going to talk to them about whether they're emotionally charged in exam, basically in the exam hall. They are not. They know how to precisely say things to get the marks and try and get away with as little work as possible. I'm not advocating you do that, but I've seen students who actually are able to do well despite doing very little work. I've also students who have worked extremely hard and their results are not showing it, you know. And so when you are actually studying and doing any questions, you ought to be asking yourself this question: what are the reasons for me doing this activity, doing this homework, doing this exercise, doing this mock paper? What is the reason? What are the things I want to find out about myself? How do I want to reinforce it? Is it to reinforce and work on my identified area of weakness? Is it to find out which topic I'm weak at? Is it to help me better, you know, manage my emotions when I'm confronted with a question where I absolutely have no idea how to do it? Is it to strengthen my stamina for a 2-hour and 15-minute paper? Because typically going towards the last 45 minutes of the paper, I kind of like feel a bit crashed up, you know, feel a bit tired. Is it to hone my calculations and my calculator skills in exam condition? I seem to always press a number wrongly. My method is correct. My number is wrong. Doing for doing's sake will not yield any fruits. The more you understand yourself, the more targeted you are, the more purposeful your exam preparation is going to be, and the better you will perform. So, which comes to my very last slide on the phases of exam preparation. Most of you have heard me talk about it. I just want to emphasize this. The first stage is really about building up your discipline and your work as well, to work on what you're weak at. To be disciplined and work on what you're weak at, not what you're strong at. Things that you're good at, don't do it to just feel good. No, you work on what you're weak at. You need a can-do and I-do attitude. Eventually, focused actions will take care of everything. It also does not mean very long hours of studies. I study for 8 hours today. No. It is about working on what you're weak at. And actually, in fact, the desired study timing should be mirroring your exam paper. So if your exam paper is 1 hour 45 minutes, then I study for 1 hour 45 minutes. Worrying definitely is fruitless. It is about having a plan daily to learn new things, to apply knowledge you have picked up, to persistently work on what you're weak at. And really, this is what the first stage is about. In the second phase, it's about marking scheme. Look from the examiner perspective as you get deeper into it. it is not your perspective. The closer you understand what examiner want, the better you understand which areas are important for exam, which are likely to be asked for exam. And as you practice and work, you're starting to create positive neural network in your brain, that's the way to do it. And so if the same type of question appear in exam, you will be able to do them efficiently, effectively, and it's all going to be correct because it has been rehearsed already prior to exam. So this phase needs understanding, needs knowing about what examiner want and writing what the question is asking, not what you want the examiner, not what you know. I always tend to see students who write a lot, which means you're writing things that you are not sure about. You're just hoping whatever you say, get it correct. You shouldn't be doing that. In the final stage, it's really about conditioning yourself. Okay, be seasoned to meet any unpleasant situations you may encounter in exam and not be derailed by it. I've covered 5 scenarios today. There could be more than that. Each of us are different, wired differently. Exam rehearsal that I notice actually does help. It does condition you for it. In fact, we all will, at some point of our time, do something that we deem really important, and hence nervousness will just kick in, even as an adult yourself. You need to translate the nervousness into positive energy. Cast it off as a shadow by focusing the task on hand, by the question you need to solve in the exam. I have seen many who started off the journey with their own set of problems and their own weaknesses, some of which whereby me myself have a lot of concern whether they will be able to make it. And they did. They did because of the one word. They're brave. They're brave every day to tell themselves that they want to do it. They are courageous every day because they take every steps and try and do it, despite the fact that they know I'm going to get it wrong today. But it's fine, because I'm getting a step closer. So I want to say this to all of you. There have seen many who started off the journey with their own problem, their own weaknesses. All of us have. Our team is here to provide counsel. I'm here to help in your journey. And with courage and bravery, I've seen many who have overcome their own personal challenges. And at the end, they did very well. And they move on in life to do great things. And they speak to me now confidently, unlike when I first met them. So for those of you who need help, after you obtain your results, do let me know. I always, we'll make sure that we meet up with you and have a chat with you. Every Saturday, 10 to 12, I'm here to talk to you individually, either via Zoom or via phone. And of course, if you want to meet in person, then we probably have to do it on Saturday after 3:30.